Elden Ring. Now, pretty much everybody knows what Elden Ring is, and if you don't, I would be quite honestly awestruck. It has a total of 42 trophies inside of it, including the Platinum, and takes various times to get, with the trophy guide saying it should be at around 65 hours to complete. But some crackheads have done it in just a few hours, so it's truly dependent on your own skill level and the method you play with. And seeing as this is a Souls game, there really isn't a stage or stages to the Platinum, just a few missable items and endings that well, you'll see. The very first thing you do in Elden Ring is make your character, of course, and I've never really been one to dive into spells or magic in Souls games, so I just chose Warrior because it's basic yet still has that dog in him. But then the game's lore opening cutscene began, and honestly I have no idea what the real lore of this game is. I just know that bosses need to be destroyed, and I'm here to do that. We then watched as the Grace chose us and brought us back to life as a tarnished one, which from my understanding just means we have failed and already died attempting to do whatever it was we were doing in a past life. The very first area of the game is called the Chapel of Anticipation. And by anticipation, if it meant instantly dying, then I'm off to a great start, because I did to this demented being right away. Now most of you probably already know this, but you actually do have to die in the starting area regardless, so you can't kill the boss, but then you're gonna have to jump off anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But that was all just so another cutscene can play, and then it shows us two people that we will see very soon. I then awoke inside of the stranded graveyard, and this is when you gain free control of your journey, able to begin the game in whatever way you choose. And I went over to the left to do the tutorial combat real fast, just so I understood the controls at least mostly. For the first few hours of this game, I did accidentally heal myself a lot by pressing square in fights, and that's because I have played a lot of games on the PlayStation where square was attack, so that's unfortunate, but life moves on. Not for me. Anyways, after exiting that intro area, I talked to one more person before beginning the grind of today, and it was this character that called us maidenless. My self-esteem was already bad, I don't need the reminder. I then began the beginning stages of Elden Ring's story, which just had me kind of exploring, trying to figure out what this massive game is all about and get better at the basics. Almost right away though, when I sat at Grace Point, Melina showed up with Torrent the horse, both of which we just saw in a cutscene. Melina is also sort of our advisor or guide of the game, at least for the most part of it, and she's what allows us to level up as well. Torrent is then the magic horse you get to help travel not be so slow, considering the game's map is quite large. But for the first hour or so, I just ran around Limegrave farming runes, getting used to the combat, and just taking a chill approach without any guides yet, as I tried to get a little peace within this game's grind. But then I decided I was good enough to go fight the first boss of the story, Margit the Fell, and it went about as well as whenever I take a shot at a real-life woman. You died. The only two words stuck in my head forever after today. But since that fight was super close, I decided to just reflect for a second on my efforts, and I realized some more farming might be needed. They call me Farming Simulator 24 with how much I farm runes today. But after a while, I sat at another Grace Point again, and Melina showed up like Brad Pitt in Fight Club. She also asked me to go to this round table with her, and that's an offer no straight man could ever refuse, so I proceeded. This also gave me the first trophy of the game, which is awesome. Only 41 more to go. But the round table is just a place where you can upgrade a variety of items, and it's very much essential to this game if you wish to ever get close to beating it. But then I did return back to fighting Margit again, and the attempts were very differing in performance. I went from dying almost right away to getting him nearly dead and then dying almost right away again. Extremely inconsistent if you catch my drift, which is common for Souls game boss fights, especially if you suck at them like I do. At one point after all the dying, I also rage quit and then threw my phone into my closet. You know, I couldn't smash the controller because I have no backups. But then I went and bought a ton of Resident Evil games to make me feel happy because they were on sale. Shout out to the clearance section. But then I did return, and I decided to take a break from Margit for a second and go level up again. Eventually though, I again did return to the boss, and I spent like maybe another 20 to 30 minutes fighting before finally beating the dumbass. And the strategy I found that worked for me was to summon some wolves in with a summoning item, and then let them distract Margit while I jerked around in the back, unsure of how to proceed. But I did win finally on this attempt and got the first of many boss trophies in the game. Also, aside from 8 trophies, every single other one in the game is in relation to a boss or ending of the game. So I finally was able to move on within the story and ended up reaching the Stormvale Castle, which is just jam-packed full of enemies, and that's honestly just how the entire game is structured. But the boss here was a dude called Godric, and he isn't quite as bad as the first guy in my opinion, but that's mostly due to me being a bit better now compared to the first boss. However, his second stage when he rips out the firearm is surprisingly annoying, and I still don't think I could tell you how to avoid it. And it still did take me another hour to crawl past this guy because of that second stage of his. Getting to that point though was very easy, but that damn firearm really just took me out back and took took advantage of me. I would like to stop talking about it now, I am a victim. However, once I did win using that same wolf strategy I had been using, I got the boss's trophy. I then progressed forward, not really sure where I was going and leaning heavily on the gray spots directions, which are very vague, just a line through the map. But this is also the point of the game where the map opens up much more compared to previous boss fights. And at this point, I was also a bit lost and confused on how you get good items and just do better, because I really don't want to spend 2 hours on every single boss in this game. I also have a life outside of video games, you know? I'm just kidding, that's a lie. But the gods above blessed me with a Discord user named Goose, whom I would go on to become friends with. And he joined me in a game of Elden Ring, then suggested I use the bleed strategy for my playthrough. This is done by using a bleed weapon and combining it with the Mimic Ashes item so you can summon in a duplicate of yourself, and then just essentially spam bleeding attacks over and over. And it is extremely effective, kind of broken some would say. He also did drop me some runes as well to give me a boost in the story so I wouldn't need to grind levels using various methods, and overall just fast track my progression, because I ain't showing you all 30 hours of leveling, let's be real here. So huge shout out to Goose, I love you. Anyways, the next main story area was at the Academy of Raya Lucaria, and it had 2 bosses inside of it actually. The first one was the Red Wolf of Radagon, and it's quite literally just a big ass wolf. Also, in terms of my method and playstyle, I am using the Bloodhound Fang weapon because it has the bleeding stat on it, and I do not have the Mimic item quite yet. I was confused on how or when you could get that, so it'll be a while before we achieve true strategy abusing. But killing the Red Wolf wasn't that hard or interesting, and here's the trophy once I finished it. However, the real boss of this place is called Renala, the Queen of the Full Moon, and I wish she showed me her full moon, god damn. But at first in this fight, I was a bit lost because I couldn't figure out how to hit her. Eventually though, I found out it's insanely simple. You literally just hit these students on the ground that are glowing, and then after a few of them, she drops down to let you actually attack her. Once depleting all of her health, you then progress to stage 2 of the fight, which is much harder like usual. And I actually looked away from my screen for a minute too long and I got blasted into outer space. A tragedy. But knowing how to do this fight now made it go much faster on my second attempt, and the second stage actually isn't that bad. Seeing as these bosses are still relatively early game, none of them are that complex or do any crazy ass moves. In fact, I think her moves might have been some of the most predictable because they're so damn slow moving. And I did beat her on my second attempt right here, which popped me the boss's trophy. And then I got a trophy called the Great Rune as well, which I'm not exactly sure how I got this because restoring power to a rune is done at like monuments and not boss fights, but I guess I'll take it. The next part of this game was then very long and it took me multiple hours to reach the next area, let alone boss fight. Anyways, before the video continues, I want to say a huge thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. If you haven't heard of War Thunder yet, it's the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, and it's available for free now on PC, consoles, and even mobile devices. You can take command of over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships of 10 major nations, ranging from biplanes and armored cars of the 1920s to the fighter jets and modern battle tanks of today. One of my favorite features is that there's no simple hitboxes in the game, meaning that War Thunder features very sophisticated vehicle damage models, and when you shoot a car's engine, you are literally shooting its engine and not just a virtual box. Another cool thing I like is its availability on mobile. This is brand new for War Thunder on both iOS and Android, so you can take the battle wherever you go and won't ever get bored. There's also very in-depth customization inside of War Thunder. It features countless camouflages, historical markings, and decorations for all types of vehicles, even community-created ones. So you truly can immerse yourself in the intense combat of War Thunder, where incredibly detailed vehicles, realistic graphics, and authentic sound effects place you right at the helm of the most powerful war machines of our time. Join a worldwide community of over 70 million players in epic PvP battles today and dive right into the breathtaking experience that is War Thunder. With an unmatched wealth of high-quality content to discover, there's simply no game better suited for fans of military history. Play War Thunder for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile devices now by using my link in the pinned comment or description. New and returning players on PC and console that haven't played in the last 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack that includes multiple premium vehicles, the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium account. This is available for a limited time only though, so be quick, and thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. But I had to chase down these medallion things to open a lift and progress forward into a new area of the game in general. Getting them, however, isn't that bad, and it's just from 2 different forts in the game. But that took us up to the capital city, and once you get inside the city, it's mostly blocked off from the outside. And from my personal experience and understanding, which is very limited, the only way into it is from beating the Draconic or Draconic Tree Sentinel, who is guarding the doorway in. Draconic, you might be asking, sounds kind of scary, and it most definitely is. The Draconic Tree Sentinel is like a normal Tree Sentinel, except it's way stronger, has more HP, and it's just more rude. Also, he breathes fire at you once he reaches lower HP, and it's not a fun time at all. I think I also spent the same amount of time fighting him that I spent on the first real bosses of the game, which is just insane. And I didn't even get a trophy once I won. Just just pure sighs of relief. But then I did enter the capital city, and I kind of just ran around not really sure of where to go, which is honestly my Elden Ring experience summed up in one sentence. Also, I died a lot during the running, which sucked. But the way you progress and get to the next boss and further the story was from actually hooking it right down a path and beginning to climb up the structure. I think it's a statue or something, I really don't know, but it's massive. Oh yeah, I also had ditched the bleeding sword for a minute because it required a more complex stone to upgrade it with, and I couldn't find any. But I still wanted to use a stronger weapon, so I started using this great sword that I could upgrade a lot, and that's why I'm now using it. Anyways, as I continued to climb up and up the structure, eventually I reached the boss fight against Golden Godfrey. Now, normal Godfrey is actually the final boss of the game aside from the Elden Beast and all of that, but the golden version which we are fighting right now is not anywhere near as challenging. Ignore me dying once. And that's mostly because he doesn't have a crazy move selection, keeping it pretty basic and allowing me to smash his life force in with my great sword. So here's that trophy once I defeated him on my second try. And quite literally a few steps and minutes away from that fight was the next one and final one in the capital city for the time being. It's against Morgoth the Omen King. And this fight is substantially harder than the Golden Godfrey one, so much so that they let you summon Melina to assist. I don't know why, but they do, so I did. Gotta take advantage of our resources, come on now, brother. And in same succession as the previous fights, I did die on my first try, which is pretty common. I mean, I have no idea these bosses moveless, so I'm basically just rolling like an idiot over them even twitching an inch of a muscle. But I did beat him on the second try, and I only got brutally impaled once or twice. So here's that trophy pop. Next up, I worked my way to the mountaintop of giants and began the battle against the fire giant. Now, I really shouldn't have done this because there's quite a few things that get altered or at least affected by us beating him and interacting with the giant's forge, but it's not to worry because I got my ass kicked anyways. So much so that I actually decided it was time to go get the mimic item and begin to use it for assistance in these fights. You also do need to get this for a trophy anyway, so we are hitting two birds with one stone right now. But getting the item is done very simply by just finding it in a chest within the underworld, or world below us I guess you could say. It's in a city called the Eternal City, but you can only access this after initiating the festival as they call it. And this is done from defeating a boss named Star Scourge Radahan or something. And the fight is said to be challenging, however there is summonings everywhere and you can just go around and summon a bunch of people to make it much easier to complete, which I did do. But once defeating him, it also gave us a trophy. And then an event occurred where an asteroid of sorts smashed into the ground and opened it up, letting us reach the below world and where we need to go. And speaking of mimics, I actually fought a mimic boss, which is a replica of yourself, and I won because nobody is better than me. Especially not me. And that was also another boss trophy, which is funny. But then I ran around and tried to find the mimic Ash's item. I got bored though, so I went and fought a different boss that was completely random and killed it easily for another trophy hit. I did eventually make it to the door we were after, which needed the key to open. Now that's lame, but I did have one, so I opened it. Fought the dude guarding the chest, and then opened the chest and obtained the arguable best item in the game. I then spent another hour going to places of importance and finding the needed materials and items to get that plus 10 rating on the Mimic Ashes, because that's what really makes them shine. And this also took me into another side boss fight against the Royal Knight Loretta, which wasn't that hard. Shout out to the Mimic doing all the work, and here's the trophy. But then I did proceed into the area I was after. I also did follow a guide on how to upgrade them fast because I desperately needed it. But eventually I did. Return to the round table, which is where you upgrade things like this, and got them to plus 10. So now it's time to return to the fire giant to take care of business that was not able to be taken care of previously. This fight is hard for basically one reason: size. This boss features the first real giant aspect we have seen so far. And in my opinion, the bigger bosses are harder to fight because they are just harder to gauge distance and hitboxes on. You also can't really hit them anywhere aside from one location to really do damage, which is stupid. But my experience fighting the fire giant taught me a lot of things. And if you just pay attention to how much HP he had in literally every single run I had at him, you'll notice a clear trend. I was edging the fire giant. I am not proud of my actions, but it happened and I have pics to prove it. Now you're probably wondering why or how I managed to choke so many times, but it's quite simple. He has this move where he just opens his chest and releases hell onto earth, which killed me pretty much every single time. Also, shout out to the 0 HP run I lost where the mimic killed him after I died. What the f? However, the run after that I did win, seeing as I have been getting extremely close every time, and it was simply just a matter of time before it ended, so here's that trophy finally. Now the next step for the main story is to interact with the giant forge from the Grace resting point. But there is some stuff to do beforehand that I didn't do because I'm dumb, so I would not suggest doing this before cleaning up side quest and item grabbing. However, once I did do it, Melina showed up again and did some witchcraft, and then we got a trophy, but also ended up in the next area of the main story, the Crumbling Farum Azula. Now there's quite a few things here of importance, both including bosses, but but also some items for shops and upgrades that we need. First, however, I did just do the boss fight, which was against the Godskin duo. And I'm not sure what they are gods at, but it sure wasn't fighting because they got clapped, and I mean that sexually. I also got a trophy from them like usual. But then I began chasing after items called bell bearings for upgrades on my weapons. You have to find these things around the game and then give them to the twins that sell smithing stones, and if you find all of them, you basically have an infinite smithing stone vendor. It's amazing. I then began to both purchase these smithing stones and just use them to finally upgrade the Bloodhound Fang from a while ago to max and actually use the best method I wanted to from the start. And I had enough stones to get the thing to max like I said, which was also a trophy from doing that. I then decided to go fight the next boss in the crumbling area.
We might have one of one.
This was also another double stage boss, with the first one being a very lame and mundane dude named the Beast Clergyman, who was dressed like an impoverished werewolf. But once getting him to half HP, he transformed into Malekith the Black Blade, a much more evil looking, intimidating, and faster boss. However, since I had the Mimic and my newly upgraded God weapon, I was able to win very easily, even though the guy definitely would have dogged me in a fair fight. But guess what? Life's not fair, and I got this trophy. And with that boss fight's conclusion, it actually triggered a world-altering event and the quote-unquote ending of this game. The Erd Tree burning. And this changes a lot of things, but mostly the capital city because it's now in ashes. So anything there is now gone, which did include some missable things, but it's fine. And I could have actually went off to fight the final bosses of the game and beat it, but I didn't want to do that because we are missing a lot of trophies and just a lot overall. So I then began to go back and just fight every other boss that gives us a trophy, which is not even near all the bosses in the game. There is hundreds of bosses if you don't know, and clearly not hundreds of trophies. Although that would be pretty cool. But the first boss I fought was the Dragon Skin Soldier of Noxtella, and I killed it faster than I can even say its name. Shout out to early bosses with endgame loot, my favorite combo aside from blonde girls with mental problems. I then fought the Regal Ancestor Spear, who posed a bit more of a challenge, however it was still not hard. Following that, I then fought these twins in another fight, which was harder than both previous fights, mostly just because there was two of them, which doubles the trouble as they say. And here's that trophy as well. Now I'm not gonna go in depth with every single boss in this game that you need to kill for trophies, both because that's boring, and also a lot of them at this point aren't super hard to do. There is the occasional optional boss like Melania, as we all know, who poses a giant challenge, but for the most part they aren't bad. So I went and killed the Godskin Noble, Lick Dragon Fortnite Sack, the Magma Worm Maker, and Mog the Omen. But then I fought a boss named Astel, and just upon watching how the boss and fight looks, you can probably tell why this one was a bit more challenging than the others. It just has more shit going on. The moves this dude had were very cool, don't get me wrong, but they were very odd and just unusual, which is why I'm talking about it and not breezing past it like the others. His only hitbox was also his fat skull head, so you couldn't really perform any back shots, and that's unfortunate. But I did still win, and here's the trophy. I then fought Commander Nile, and this one was again above average in difficulty. However, most of the damage I was taking was entirely my fault from being greedy with hits and also just running in cock out. But he also had a lot more HP than the other bosses and spawned in some assistance as well, which ticked up the difficulty meter. Thanks to my Mimic Slave though, we did it and got the trophy. I then went and defeated 3 more bosses, first being a lassie named Loretta, then a dude who thinks he's cool being named Elmer of the Briar, more like Elmer's f***ing dead, and then I beat the shit out of a deer. Shout out to the PETA organization, you can't stop this. And next I went and fought Melania, Blade of Mikkel. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really think she was that hard. I know, I do have insanely good items and the most cheese method of playing this game, but still, dude, she didn't even kill- No, I'm just kidding, yeah, no, she definitely killed me. But it was in the second stage of the fight, so it's respectable. And yeah, if you don't know, she has 2 stages. The first one is like the Sunday schoolgirl stage where everything's respectable. And then the second one, she just rips off all of her clothes. In fact, the only hard part about this fight for me was me, if you know what I'm saying. Now, I'm not saying this fight is easy, because even with my OP setup, I barely won, but I still did, and here's the trophy. GG baby. The next boss I fought was then just a giant snake one. And it's just kind of weird how this fight works, but the second phase, the snake then grew arms and became more demented and twisted. It also sent skulls flying at me. This fight actually looks like a bad trip if you could visual it on a hot day. But I didn't die at all, it just took me forever to get him down to 0 HP and this trophy to pop. Next I fought Mog of the Blood. I swear we have fought this dude or his cousins like 12 times today, but they still can't win. How sad, and here's his trophy. The next fight I did was then against a boss called Dragon Lord Placidax. I definitely said that wrong, but I don't remember how they say his name, and I'm not sorry. Because this fight is, in my personal opinion, harder than the Melania one. I don't think it's the hardest in the entire game, but I do think it's harder than hers. And it took me numerous tries, and I mean numerous tries to win. And that's almost all because he is both a flying fucking dragon, and also has a ton of lightning attacks that just show up and kill you. It's really a fun time, to be honest. Overall, I think I spent a little under an hour here, but also the run back to the fight was stupid as hell, and that made me more angry than actually dying in it. Rest in peace, Closet Door once more. The children might escape now. But here's the trophy once I did kill him finally. And that was then basically it for all the bosses in the game. I know, that was a lot, but the grind is only just beginning, my friend, because now I get to go run around this game's world and find every collectible item I need for the various collectible trophies. And the first one I began with was finding all the legendary armaments. And these are mostly just weapons, but thankfully quite a few were from bosses that I already killed and had in my inventory. So that made this one very easy and simple compared to the others that follow. And here's the trophy once I got the final one from yet again another boss fight that dropped it. I do also want to say a huge thanks to all the people that make guides for this game. There's a lot of them out there, and I also followed a lot of them to find all of these items. But overall, getting these collectible trophies did take quite a few hours. However, it's more just boring and annoying to find them than actually hard. I also did play this game for 13 hours straight, so that didn't help the boredom in my mind. But I'm not going to go through all the collectibles. They are very straightforward, and most of them I didn't even end up using in the game after getting them all, so that's fun. But after getting that final one, it is now time to go finish the game, seeing as that is all I have left in terms of trophies. The final boss of the game that gives you a trophy is yet again Godfrey, the first Elden Lord from earlier, except he's actually here, not just in spirit. Ignore me dying first try, it happens. But second try, I got him down to below half health, which then made him transform into a bloody version of himself. I don't know why, but it was kind of cringe and lackluster, so I think they definitely could have done more with this, but that's okay because I destroyed him. It wasn't even close. This fight is a joke, and here's the trophy. Alright, so now it is time to finish the game. The final boss fight. It first begins with us going through this glowing door and then seeing Radagon of the Golden Order crawl to his form out of sleep or something. Bro has taken that woke up like this mentality a little too far in my opinion, but overall the fight against him alone is not that bad. It definitely isn't easy just because his attack type is very aggressive and has a ton of splash damage and area damage attacks. But the one after once he transforms against the Elden Beast, which is the final fight of the game, is fucking ridiculous. I don't know how anyone, especially the guide creator of the Elden Ring Trophy Guide, could say that this fight is easier than the Malenia one. I just don't get it. The Elden Beast has some of the most random attacks. The thing has countless moves, countless variations of those moves, and literally just does them at random times. There is almost zero predictability of what this bitch is gonna do before they do it. It's insane. I've actually seen less bipolar mentality in clinically bipolar people. I think Kanye West has a more solid mind and decision making than this motherfucker. And I just went back and counted real fast how many tries it took me to beat the Elden Beast alone without the occasional death to the first phase, and it ended up being 12 full runs of dying before finally winning. Also taking me an hour and a half to do all of that because these fights are not quick by any means. But once I did finally win, you don't even get a trophy for winning the fight. Instead, you just teleport to the endings room, where you can save and then use the cloud saving feature to get all 3 endings without needing 3 playthroughs. That is, if you're not a complete and utter fucking moronic idiot like I am. Story time, ladies and gentlemen. A bit earlier when I was, doing the collectible trophies, I also set up the 2 endings of the game, involving Ronnie and the Frenzied Flame. However, I was not used to how this game functions and thought that you needed to just set them both up and then just get to the end of the game and would have the option to pick whatever ending you pleased. That is not how it works. Oh no, not at all. Turns out if you set up the Frenzied Flame ending at all, you get that ending, and that ending alone, completely regarding the other 2, which is probably the dumbest thing I've ever seen the game do in a long time. Shout out to From Software. But before I continue on, I did just do that ending anyway, since it's all I got left. The ending, by the way, just kind of had everything burn. This world, and here's the trophy. So now I get to go replay the entire game again in New Game Plus, but that's just what I thought I had to do and kind of did begin doing. And this is because it's not really super well known, but you can get rid of the Frenzied Flame from your character. I know, it sounds crazy, but there's a side quest line with a girl named Malicent who is a relative of Malenia, and after you go through her very difficult and long quest line, you will get given a special syringe which can then be used one time and only inside the Dragon Lord area boss fight that I struggled on previously. But once you do use it, your character's eyes should go back to normal, meaning the flame is now gone from inside of us. And it does work, so that saved me countless hours of time. Also, huge thanks to the people who have guides on that quest line. I have no clue how you discovered that, but then I was able to just get the other 2 endings. Shout out to the Ranny ending, the best one. Also, the normal ending was okay, no judgment. But here's that final trophy with the Platinum Trophy Pop added on. So that was the Elden Ring Platinum Trophy experience. Once more, I want to say huge thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring this video.